Paul, Dave, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Oh, yes, yeah, loud and clear.
I'm gonna have to. Paul, Dave, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I can hear you, yeah.
That's my internet completely bailed right at the beginning
Yeah,
at the start.
you're kidding. Yeah, I know. Best laid plans.
Cool. You got me now. You got me now.
Yeah, you're
Sorry,
loud and
everyone.
clear.
As soon
Yeah,
as, as soon as we hit record, internet bailed completely. So I've gone back into the house and used the internet in the house. Sorry. So welcome everyone. Apologies for the slight delay there. Typical. I appreciate you all coming. Thank you very much to the Redeployable team for setting this up, and thank you, Paul and Dave, for being here. For this session, what we want to do is uncover a bit more about the energy sector. I think I don't know about anybody else, but actually leaving the military, it's a really difficult industry to understand. It's a minefield. I posted this morning on LinkedIn about the extent of my knowledge of this sector was wind farms at one point in my life. And the more I get into this sector and more I understand this sector, it's an extremely difficult place and complicated place. But actually, the demand in this space is vast. And with things like AI now driving a lot more power requirements, a lot more data centers, a lot more energy needs, it's a super exciting place to be. So I'm going to do a quick intro to both Paul and Dave. Then what we're going to do is you'll see at the bottom of the screen, there's a Q&A. You can ask questions throughout. What we'll do is we'll spend probably 20 minutes speaking to both Paul and Dave about some of their experiences. And then we'll do a 15-minute Q&A at the end where we'll look at some of the questions that you've asked throughout, or we can ask some questions at the end. And we'll finish on getting some answers from both Paul and Dave on the questions that you have. Remember, there's no silly questions here. It's a safe space. So whatever you want to ask it, and we'll try and get it answered on this call. Great. So first up, Paul Capindale, who's the service projects lead at Honeywell. We've been working really closely with Honeywell over the past 9-10 months. An amazing organisation. Paul's background has been very hands-on. He's worked his way up from the tools to now running major engineering projects across Europe. He's led big teams, delivered big results, and worked with many veterans along the way. He's an advocate for teamwork, resilience, and getting the job done right. He's led engineering teams, managed multi-million-pound projects, but he's always kept people at the heart of it all. And then we've got Dave Edwards. He's the managing director of F&H Power Consultants. He's a veteran himself. Unfortunately, Royal Navy, not British Army. But, some people have to do it. With over 30 years of experience in energy in the engineering world, he's held senior positions at Rolls-Royce. He's built teams from scratch, and he's now running his own business. He's got a broad view of the sector, from naval systems, gas turbines, power plants, you name it. If you're curious about how to get your foot in the door, Dave's your guy. Great. Thanks, guys. Thanks for both being here. I'm going to get stuck into the questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah, fire away.
I'm going to start with you, Paul. And I think this is really interesting in a sense of we think about energy as like the production of power, right? Like whether that's wind, nuclear, but you work in smart buildings, and you would have asked me 18 months ago what smart buildings were. I would have had absolutely no clue. So can you just give us a bit of a brief overview about your world and what it's all about?
Yeah, so I mean, I ended up moving into the industry, I say building services HVAC, from cutting grass as a greenkeeper. So massive transition. And I wouldn't have known at the time either what the energy sector was outside of the broader, generation, petrochemical, renewables, and very quickly descended into the world of smart buildings, building automation. And it's really not widely known about, and it touches all of your sort of 50% of your energy sort of spend traditionally comes from HVAC, lighting, IT, and we control those elements of the building, the HVAC, and throughout the building services sector, everybody touches this, whether it's making sure a pump runs optimally, making sure that it runs to the right time. It's quite simplistic stuff that has a huge impact on the operational efficiency, the energy usage in a building and building stock. So, and that's for me spans every industry. I mean, personally, I've worked in petrochem, pharmaceutical, defence, worked across hospitals, estates, manufacturing, worked in car plants, worked in data centres, leisure industry, commercial buildings. Every building has to be controlled, and if it's not, there is a huge connotation on the amount of energy spent. So we touched that, and traditionally, personally, I didn't realise that was what that was at the start. So every bit of day-to-day activity that the teams and people in the industry do make a huge difference. So, but not, like you said, traditional thought set for what energy sector is, maybe.
Yeah, you don't like you're in it day to day. You're experiencing it day to day, but you just kind of pass it off as it's just how things are, right? You go into a museum and you just expect it to work, right, and it to be a good environment to be in. So the more I dig into this space, it's so broad in terms of where you can operate as well. Like, did you get a sense of like when you started off, like the breadth of the industry, or was it being more in the industry over time that you really got to understand it in terms of like
more over time, but very short, sharp shock. Where I started, with the air conditioning refrigeration side. So you move in and around, obviously, the retail side and the office space, and then quickly you'll be in a factory environment looking at the HVAC and energy. You traditionally don't think that energy is as a play there, but everybody's looking to not overconsume. So despite whatever their operational and their business requirements are, nobody wants to just burn energy, so to speak. So everyone's looking, the net zero piece is paramount, and everyone's moving towards that. So even, data centers have got a very clear mandate to run as clean and as green, and as efficiently as possible. But as you mentioned earlier, absolutely huge power consumers.
Yeah, amazing. Dave, you left the Navy. What made you get into the sector? Like, why did you decide on this one?
I guess for me, I think it was a bit of a soft landing. I had gone through the technical route. I joined as a stoker. I managed to get on an artificer's apprenticeship course. I actually was working on Rolls-Royce power plant within the Navy, Olympus, Tyne and Spey. I actually ended up as an instructor. And I sort of did all those things when you leave. I actually thought about being a policeman. My dad was a policeman. Thought about technical sales because that looked really flash. Everyone had a car and a nice suit. And my wife convinced me that I'd spent all this time training. I'd gone off, done the OND. In my own time, I did an HNC. So I didn't really, I guess, I didn't really want to go back on the tools, but actually that's really where my strengths are, actually getting kit fixed. I think in the Navy, same as in the Army, sort of availability, giving, power to the command, was critical. And so for me, I started off actually as an operator in Rolls-Royce, as a contractor, and we'll talk a bit about this, but I thought that was sort of technically below me. But you mentioned earlier about getting your foot in the door. It was absolutely the right thing. It was just to get my foot in the door and then to demonstrate what I could do. But in answer to your question, whether it's a power and propulsion plant with a gas turbine, a shaft and a propeller on a marine vessel, or it's actually a land-based power plant with a gas turbine shaft driving a generator. They're all the same prime movers. One's got water around it, and they're really similar technology. And actually, you do get loads of former marine engineers going into that industry, bit nuclear, in sort of conventional gas, etc. So for me, yeah, it was a soft landing, and it was the right choice.
Yeah, I'm gonna come back to that. I'm gonna speak to Paul. I want to ask you a little bit about progression, and I want to come back to the military aspect to this, Dave, because I think it's interesting. You said it's a soft landing, but I assume you were drinking from a fire hose for quite a while when you got in there. So I'll come back to you on that. But Paul, you've gone from the tools to senior leadership in Honeywell. What I think in the military, you've got like this route of progression, right? Like you know that you're going to be a private, a lance jack, a full screw, a stripey, and you just got this visibility of like what you could be paid in the next 12 years if you knuckle down and get some good SJARs. What's that experience been like for you? Because you've been in the industry a long time, but you started on the tools. Is it is there opportunity? Is it easy to promote within industry?
Yes. A very brief answer first. Yes, it is easy to progress. If you show the right skills, the aptitude, get the right results, that's always an opportunity. Lots of people that I've worked with along the way, previous apprentices, are now service managers at the UK level in other parts of the industry. So progression is there. I took arguably quite a traditional route. I went from being on the tools to leading the team on the tools, and then latterly moved around various different positions and throughout the company. Progression, it's quite linear if you want it to be, but I think there's all these other branches that you can move into. I mean, there's a lot of people are very, very successful working, use their technical acumen to get them into the sales arena. I mean, that working knowledge of the systems is fantastic, but then there's people that can move now. If you entry in, basic BMS, for argument's sake, you can move into software development. There's such a breadth of, ICT skills required. It's really, for me, it's the individual. The opportunities are there. I could see it in and around people that I've known and worked with over the last 30 years that have moved around, progressed. And if you have the appetite, the desire, for me, it's just about getting into the place and understanding what those other less linear progression paths are. You mentioned the military. It's very clear, isn't it, where you go. If you're in infantry, say, step where you go and you know exactly what that looks like. Maybe not as clear, but I think generally the business world and the industry are very good at doing the people side of things now, and there's lots and lots of time invested by companies to make sure that people are aware of the opportunities and how to help develop the skills along the way to make sure that they are ready when these opportunities arise.
And one of the surprising things it stands out compared to other industries, being closer to people like Schneider and Honeywell, is like tenure in business as well. Like there are people. I mean, I met someone at Honeywell yesterday who'd been in the business for 34 years, right? Like I was 2-year-old when he started, and I let him know that as well. People seem to stay as well in one company a lot as well. Why do we think that is? Is that because of that people management, the environment, the culture?
That's the culture and the environment fostered by the people. I mean, that is people's key in all of this. You can have the best process plan in the world, but if people aren't there to execute and make that actually happen, and good people around you and good teams, people won't stay. They don't have to in this. You're not signed up generally to that, length of service, so to speak. People have options, and I think that speaks volumes, particularly in our industry. The tenure is very good, and yes, you do see people moving around. Like you say, there is a shortage of people out there, so that gives people the opportunity. So when you do find a company that the tenure is as long as, for argument's sake, ours, that I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, and Dave, thanks, Paul. Dave, I'm thinking about you landing in industry then. So the kind of promotion path doesn't feel as linear because you don't, you're landing and trying to figure out this industry and progress. How did you handle that? And then how did you think like your naval experience helped? Like what skills did you bring across? How did you
Yes.
stand out when you landed in the industry?
Yeah, and I think, Paul just said it. It's a lot of it is absolutely is your attitude. Ultimately, you come from the forces, and it's not, it's not financially driven. When you go into industry, at the end of the day, you've got to deliver a product. That product is getting electricity power onto the market at a price, and part of that is making sure the plant is available. Look, and it's not, when I left, I thought I'll have loads of time off. I actually did more time away. I literally joined Rolls-Royce as a power plant engineer. I got a mobile phone, do you mean a company car and a laptop, and I was doing about 22,000 miles, a year. I was on a 2-hour call out, but what they really liked was your whole attitude. I wanted to get the site. I wanted to just fix the problem and get the plant back up and running. And that whole attitude stems from the Navy, mainly because you want to get away weekend, or you want to, or you want to get to the mess and have a beer, etc. But that really, goes down well in industry. People who can be motivated and not just, I used to see some people would turn up, maybe not forces, but their attitude, well, if the kit isn't here, I can't fix it. My attitude was, well, I know where the kit is. I will go and get that kit and I will get it up and running. And that does, that for me really matters. That attitude is everything. So like I said, it
How
was a soft landing.
how do you deal with, and this is a bit off piste, but I'm going with it.
Go on then.
How how do you deal? I see frustration from veterans moving into multiple industries, but even
Yeah,
in this sector as well, that they want to get things done, but they're in a
yeah,
huge organization and they can't
yeah.
get things done. And that is I see that regularly. And they're trying to move mountains in an organization that's, turning a juggernaut. It takes a long time to do things. How did you deal with that? Because you sounded like you're a go-getter, probably
Yeah,
still are.
it's really difficult because you look, in any industry, there's a human factor element, and you've got to work with people, and you can quite easily upset people by doing stuff they're not used to doing. So it's just trying to, I guess, going out and doing things. Look, I've left now, but when we came in, procurement was a nightmare. So we'd go out and literally use our own sort of debit credit cards and get the kit. That was frowned upon. I guess you're not going to fix it, but I think, in answer your question, it is a little bit of eggshells because you can definitely upset people. So you've really got to be mindful of that. So yeah, that is challenging. I'd agree.
Got to be political. Got to
It's
try and think.
it's unbelievably,
Yeah.
because you then procurement then says, well, you've identified we're not doing a great job, but maybe that does then plant a seed, and maybe they then realize they need to slightly up their game. So if you can don't completely raise the bar, but if you can slightly start raising the bar, people will. And then look, you do like a senior, you'll get senior managers who will go, well, suddenly my availability's gone from 92% to 95%. Why is that? Well, we're getting the kit to site a lot quicker, and we're getting it fixed a lot quicker. Well, those are the sort of guys I need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just not the bull in a china shop approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
So Paul, then this is a good segue to you. You've worked with a lot of veterans.
Yep.
What have been your experiences? And second to that, where do you see the opportunity in the industry for people from the military?
So I've worked with a lot of veterans in a lot of different roles. So from engineering to leadership, if I pick sort of the engineering side of stuff, the adaptability and the skills, and I think the very, for me, it's been the logical thought process people follow to solving a problem, and to mention the point about making things change, but they've always managed to come into the business, especially new starters, and very, very quickly adapt to the processes and procedures and stuff that are asked of them. Not to say that they don't come up with, and then also challenge it in the right way. So where they see opportunities for improvement, and I guess to your previous point about, bull in a china shop, some things aren't the easiest to change and move, but not being afraid to bring that up and stick with it. And from the leadership side, to me, it speaks no surprise whatsoever. Anyone coming from the services should have great leadership qualities. And for me, you know, you bring the leadership qualities in, and then it's more about bringing some of maybe the business world, the business acumen, and some of that other stuff, and maybe the blending of the two worlds. So it's, you know, that side of stuff is, you know, we just don't find it. It's not that easy to come by, and it's second nature to people that are coming out from so far, and the veterans I've worked with. So
Cool. Yeah, no, thank you. So a lot of people on the call are most likely on the call because they're interested in potentially moving into the sector. Dave, what do you think? Like, what's the opportunity right now? I talk about AI and what AI is doing in the market
Yeah, look,
around power requirements.
it's when you look at the whole thing holistically, right? So ultimately, one of the reasons I went into the sector is we're always going to need demand. We're always going to need power. And from when I joined, that type of power is actually changed from sort of large centralized power plants. We lost the last coal plant, Ratcliffe-on-Soar, I think last year. You know, they were all shut down. Nuclear is diminishing. So with the challenges, we've not only got, you know, they reckon demand's going to double by 2050. So we've not only got increasing demand, we've now got set UK targets to decarbonize the grid by, you know, down to 95% by 2030. So I think for me, if you want to see where the opportunities are, see where the targets are in the growth. You know, I look, ChatGPT, you know, you're currently looking at about 30 gigawatts of wind at the moment, increasing to 80 gigawatts by 2030. That's going to need people. Solar, 5 gigawatts from up to 47 gigawatts by 2030. Look at nuclear. My company, Rolls-Royce, you know, nuclear probably 2 years ago was a industry in decline. You know, you now look at it now with the Rolls-Royce won the Great British Nuclear Competition for SMRs. They're looking to build 3 nuclear plants. You know, these are ideal opportunities for veterans. So look at the top, you know, go and find the companies that are advertising the jobs. Look at, you know, the skills they're looking for and align your skills with those. But anything, like you said, anything in energy, you know, carbon reduction, demand reduction, it's bigger than when I joined. So I think I looked, and again, a stat you've got at the moment is we need 1/3 people, new people into the sector by 2030. All right, and 1/3 of those, like me, will be retiring by 2030. And we've only got, was it 12 to 15,000 service leavers per year? So there's loads of opportunity. You just need to go and find it.
And you've just raised an interesting point there, like the aging demographic in the
Oh,
industry as
yeah,
well.
they call it the silver tsunami.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's
The
good,
silver
isn't it?
tsunami.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just help people understand that a little bit more? Because I think that's like an industry-wide
Yeah,
crisis, right?
I guess actually a really, you know, really interesting point. You said, you know, a lot of the people who joined the sector, and the Rolls-Royce were the same, that, you know, the fathers joined, brothers, etc., and long were really long in their sort of careers. But I think back in the day, CGB, Central Electricity Generating Board, you have proper apprenticeships, loads of training, and people came all the through. So the people you see retiring now are people who had those sort of really sort of embedded sort of trade degree sort of qualifications. We just, you know, it's the same as armed forces. You know, the artificers went. I don't know what it's like in the REME, Royal Engineers, etc. So you're seeing not only, so you're now seeing a decline in skills, people entering the sector. So all the people who had all the skills are really towards that top end of that demographic now, and that's a huge number, isn't it? 1/3 of those people that they need will be, you know, will be retiring.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands of hours of experience leaving the
Yeah,
industry.
yeah,
And
it's absolutely crazy.
what then, Paul? Thanks, Dave. How quickly is the industry moving? Like what do you think about the next 5 years out? I get a job in the energy sector right now. Like, what type of person do I need to be in terms of the pace in which the industry is changing?
I think you need to be adaptable. The industry is changing so rapidly, and then again, I don't speak for the whole of the energy sector, but if I look at our industry, it's just changing so fast, and you know, you can't be prepared or expect to stand still. Things are changing, things are moving on. You know, it's the same in our part of the world. You know, we've got an aging demographic. We need to obviously get new people into the industry. You've got to bring them up, you know, with the new skills that are required, and be able to work with all the legacy stuff, because the world doesn't change overnight. You don't just get to replace your old HVAC or old equipment, your old generation. You know, so you still have to bridge the gap between the, you know, the 35-year time served guy that knows everything about the old stuff and the new bit, because they both have to run together and work together. But adaptability, and don't ever be prepared to stand still, because it won't happen for the moment.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. People that know me well know that I love tech. I'm all in the kind of software AI space. I think it's super exciting, but I genuinely believe that the energy sector is one of the most exciting places to be right now, just because of the demand, the need for talent, like great talent that fits most definitely the military mold, and just the way it's moving and how fast it's moving. So it's super exciting. Have you got anything else? I'm going to move to questions in a minute. Anyone who's listening, if you've got any additional questions, I've seen some rolling in the chat and also the Q&A section. Paul, Dave, have you got anything else to add before we move into Q&A?
I think the only thing for me, for me would be, you know, just there's a lot of people who say, you know, I can't get in this sector because I'm not technical. There's a lot of people, because of the demand for people. I work on solar sites. They take people on as general operators. I think, and as I did, you've got to be willing to almost, you know, take one step back to take 2 paces forward to learn a bit about the industry. So that would be my takeaway.
Yeah, and I think it's good that, I mean, Dave's sort of in the generation started of the energy sector, and we're on the, you know, reducing the demand at the end. And yeah, likewise, it needs that. But if you want the variety, for me, you know, very seldom do we work in one individual space. And if you like the variety and you want that move, it's definitely something you should consider. It's never been a dull moment in my entire time in the industry, and I wouldn't get, you know, I wouldn't change it for the world. So
Yeah, and I think to your point, Dave, like the way in which for people on the call, the way in which these big organizations source talent is they either run apprenticeships, and those apprenticeships they care about how quickly someone's productive in a business, right? And these young people are not productive for say 48 months, sometimes 60 months, or they steal each other's talent. And there's not enough talent because everyone's getting, you know, the silver and old, and like people are leaving, right? So I've seen more and more organizations like Honeywell is a great example, who are actively searching for people who are maybe 60, 70% of the way there from a skill perspective, and then upskilling them
100%.
within the business on the job. And I think that's the new wave in this sector of like organizations investing in the people who are halfway there, right? Or 60, 70% of the way there. I think that's something to bear in mind, back to Dave's point about I don't have enough technical qualifications. The range of people Honeywell are hiring right now, as an example, broad from marine engineers to, you know, I think there's an air traffic controller at one point, like all sorts of different people. So that's something to consider as well.
Agreed. Attitude is everything.
yeah,
100%. Did you have something to say then, Paul?
No, I was going to say it's not all about what the companies out there can offer you. It's about what you guys offer the company, and that's you know, I think it's quite a unique skill set, and you know, the attributes that people can bring. It bolsters us, and it helps change, you know, for the better everywhere. So it's not, like you say, it's not a 48-month program. It's something completely different that you guys, I think, uniquely offer us in the industry.
Great. Right, I'm going to move on to questions. We've got questions rolling in. I'm going to go to the Q&A section first, and then I'll move to the chat. We've partially answered this one. What skills are becoming increasingly valuable that weren't as important 5 years ago? We've talked about adaptability. Is there anything else that we want to add to that?
I think if you look at actually what the industry, like I said, for me, you know, attitude is everything. And you talk about skills. Well, let's talk about competence, skills, knowledge, and experience. All right. So, you know, like I said, attitude is everything. Go out there and get some knowledge on the sector. All right. And then physically, you can go out and look at the jobs that they're desperately short of electrical engineers in the sector. you've got to look, if we're going to build all these power plants, then we're going to need everything from construction, project managers, health and safety. Everyone wants to be a health and safety manager, or they want to be a project manager. But if you want to do that, then be really targeted and specific about the sector, whether that's wind or solar. They are transferable, but be more targeted with that skill set you've got.
Great.
Yeah,
Thanks, Dave.
Totally echo that. To target your activities and see, and it's not easy. Could I tell you where I am now is where I plan to be? No, but somehow you do that, and you do put the time and effort and focus where you need to be. As it's technical, again, there's very specific things that once you hone in on what you want to do, you can be very targeted in the activities to bring you close to that 70-80% Ben was talking about along the way. So yeah, definitely echo that.
Great. What areas would you point non-technical management towards? Would you advise any particular qualifications to mitigate a lack of industry experience, maybe in project management or other areas altogether?
Want me to answer that one? I think if you look, so what I'd probably say is, if you look at complexity, if you take something that's high risk and really complex, nuclear power plant, heat, rotating equipment, nuclear radiation, etc., etc. If you then go down to thermal power plants, lots of rotating equipment, confined space, thermal energy, electricity. I'm sure my clients can hate me for saying this, but solar is an easier access route, and it's an easier access route because there's a lower amount of hazards on site, probably from a field trip, slips, trips and falls. You've got electricity, but you don't have all the traditional hazards you get. So that, for me, again, if you wanted a softer landing, and actually, I'm an authorizing engineer for a client, and they take people on almost as laborers, and they start training them up because it's a lot easier. Actually, if you go into a traditional power plant, thermal power plant, there's a lot more hazards that you need to be aware of. So I think for me, it would be on the sort of solar, maybe wind, but I think there's less hazards, and that would be my reasoning.
Yeah, super interesting. Paul, anything else to add to that?
No, I think, I mean, for me, there isn't, maybe not the less technical route, or I wouldn't point anybody in that direction. I think from a project management perspective, that's very clear. There's many methodologies and things and qualifications but it's about, a lot of the challenge I see is getting the skills in and around the projects you are managing, and there's a certain amount of product awareness and stuff which has to come at a point that you're in that role, I think. But yeah, it's because people are guarded about the technology, so that's fine. But I think that, for me, it's still about finding your path, really. And then it should all fall into line, and there's plenty of all the support's out there in industry and outside of that. It's product specifics, the last bastion, unfortunately.
Yeah, great. Is it important to specialize in a particular area for progression, or is there scope to remain as a more of a generalist?
Go first if you. I would say, if you're in my world, generalist still comes with a technical you've still got your specialisms, you've still got your system knowledge and everything. Can you progress through various roles and leadership and with being generalist? Yes, but then I would say that your skills and capabilities are in people leadership, and you can't discount that as being a skill or as a technical expertise. So I don't want to. We should never discount the fact that getting to be being a good people leader is a very tough skill to earn and learn and everything. So
I think that's a really, but I think that's a really important. Like, I just think to my sister who left the army last year, 18 months ago. She's the UK&I service director for Schneider Electric. She's never been a field service engineer or a commissioning engineer. She's very good at the operational side, leads a large team, and is a people person. So I think I echo that point, Paul. Is like there's that element of leadership where people can jump into maybe a middle manager type role if they've got that type of experience.
Yeah,
You work
I
out,
think
yeah.
yeah, I think from my experience, I always wanted to, pretty much know everything from where, the fuel came in to getting the energy onto the market. And I guess for me, if I'd have stayed, I was a controls electrical field service engineer, and that was quite specialized. But we used to work on all the kit a bit like in the military and the navy. But as I progressed through to management and senior management, for me, it was great having that technical insight as well, because if the site wasn't available and someone tell me what the issues were, that was affecting us commercially, and I can make decisions as to what we did with that power plant, basically what the safety issues were, and I could make commercially the right decisions as well. And I think for me now, as a consultant, I always plan to be able to deliver a load of services, not so much being an expert in every single one, but I've got a good understanding of them all. And I think for me, that's really helped me.
Yeah, great. Great. Thank you very much, both. What sort of roles are you hiring the most for at the moment? Dave mentioned electrical engineers. Are there any others in super high demand? Start with you, Paul.
Well, yeah, as you know, working currently with yourselves anyway. So we're BMS connected engineers in high demand. We're hiring fire engineers. I think there's throughout the industry, BMS side, there's specialisms that need to be considered. There's a lot of stuff around various product skill sets. So anything on the Tritium N4 platform, those skills are needed and required. ICT skills, an operational technology level engineers. There's actually, I think Dave's mentioned it as well. It's from the bottom up. There's a shortage. So I think it's finding where you think you would best fit, because I think from electrical engineer, electricians, right the way through, there is a gap. So.
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably quite, it's a lot easier if you've already had some training as an electrical engineer to say that I want to upskill to be an electrical engineer. But maybe if you look at other opportunities, and as I said, there's power plant for me that's coming offline. We've got to do a massive build out. So you need, design engineers, you need installation and commissioning, manufacturing. If you just look at the whole, to actually get that sort of 80 gigawatts of wind capacity actually online, there's 5 years worth of work. We need people. You look at the Hinkley, biggest building site, the amount of roles. If you went online and looked, around EDF and looked at the type of roles they're advertising for, that will quickly tell you what they're targeting. I think, and again, going back to my point, a lot of people want to be project managers in health and safety, and that's what Paul highlighted as well. You do need some specific knowledge around that skill base. So, and again, that's sort of getting your foot on the floor at an entry level to get an understanding of the business, and then moving on from there for me.
Yeah, I'm both. Thank you for that. I see role. I get to see many different companies as well, like yourself, Dave. But I mean, sales is always in demand. Consultants, I see veterans going into consultancy roles. PM, project management, is an obvious one. Ops, facilities management is an obvious one. You keep naming them, from a field service engineering, so fire, BMS, those types of roles. Generally, like organizations like a Honeywell or a Schneider are looking for level 3 MVQ in electrical engineering, or some level of kind of competency within electronics in the past. So there's just so much opportunity, so much different opportunity. But Hinkley and Sizewell, seeing places like that, it blows my mind in terms of what's going on there.
Well, you look at the Rolls-Royce SMR, potentially that's Albury, Whiteford. They've got to build them first. I mean, before they even get it on the bars, and you're going to need people, and that won't be until 2030. And we've already said, 150,000, people, that grey tsunami, are going to be retiring. So put yourself in a position to take up those, and it will get more desperate. It will definitely get more desperate. So yeah.
Yeah, you called it a silver tsunami earlier on, and I prefer that. Last question. Are there any industry networking events that you could recommend to improve our understanding and connection?
I mean, for me, there's a number of events that you could go to. The smart buildings. BCIA and BISRI do networking events, and it's probably a good place to just start, looking on the internet. And I guess, we're maybe not as widely known as an industry as we should be, and that's quite challenging. And that's probably partially where we find ourselves in this position. People don't know about it. It's not a traditional route. It's not something you think, when you're going through your GCSEs, I wonder, I'd like to be a BMS engineer. Did building automation feature? It doesn't. So I think that, those sort of events are good. And it gives you opportunity to talk to people and the end users, and maybe, like to Dave's point, you really get to start to understand what people's driving factors are and where everybody's heading. You can tell by the stands and what what manufacturers and the companies are selling on the stands, where things are heading and where people want it to go. So I would say that, and smart buildings. If to just call out some of the stuff that you mentioned right at the very beginning, we do have that event, and that would be a great place. So maybe.
Yeah, I think to back up what Paul was saying, I totally agree. And there's, in terms of the industry, there's solar and storage they do up at the NEC. All of these are free events to attend. You just get yourself, as a participant, and get yourself booked on. There's always loads of talks. There's always loads of people to go and talk to, and look and walk up to someone who's maybe, trying to either sell operations and maintenance services, installation, and ask them, look, this is who I am. How could I get into the sector? Actually, could I come out with you for the day, etc. And for me, I guess the big takeaway is networking, network.
Yeah. I mean, you've also got like the trade associations as well. Like Solar Energy UK, I've met with them in London, and they've got a huge push to try and connect lots of different people in. So like, look at the trade associations. Look at what individual organisations are doing. Go to a CTP event and go and speak to some energy companies there. Like, you could go. There's plenty of places you can go to find information. Great. So for the people who've asked questions in the chat, we've got all of your names, so we'll get those answered and get them to you offline. Paul, Dave, I really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for bearing with me when my internet dropped out right at the beginning of the call. For everyone listening, thank you so much for taking the time. The opportunity to connect with either Dave or Paul or the redeployable team, we're heavily involved in the energy sector right now, so we can make some introductions, help you out with the next step. Give us a shout. There'll be a follow-up after this call with some information, so you can reach out to any of the team, and we'll help you where we can. Great. Thanks very much, guys. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.